Hey, I'm back. We're gonna come into the empowering conversation around mental health and self-esteem. And I wanted to bring this up, and we're actually gonna have an interview tonight with another one of my friends, Anastasia, and talk about how do these two things link? How do we where is unhealthy self-esteem born from, and how do we overcome it? There's healthy self-esteem and there's unhealthy self-esteem. And when I think of self-esteem, I think of self-worth, how I'm valuing myself, how I'm empowering myself every day. It's really the self-talk. How am I talking to myself? I can give advice or give feedback or constructive criticism or compliment other people or build people up all day long or counsel other people all day long, but then when it comes to myself, it's completely different. I'm preaching to my clients all day long about self-care and helping them to overcome struggles or obstacles in their life, telling them how to love themselves more. But then when I try to do that to myself, sometimes it can prove challenging. I don't know if any of you have struggled with this in your own life. I'd love to hear your feedback after this video of just how are you going from on a day-to-day basis, how are you empowering yourself? And so I'm going to share my view on self-esteem, and maybe some of you will agree with me, some of you might disagree. I'm just kind of exploring this right now for myself, and where did this actually come about for myself. Another post one of my friends posted today was, the most courageous act for us is to be and own all that we are without the excuses, without the masks, without the apologies, and own that. And a lot of times we wear masks. I can speak for my own self of wearing masks to impress someone or just be someone I'm not and cover up who I am, the truth of who I am. So how do we step into and own all that we are without apology? First of all, I think looking at where does unhealthy self-esteem come from? And feel free to comment, those of you watching, feel free to comment in the comment section about, I think this is such an important and empowering conversation to have at this time because, like I said in my other video, I work in a psychiatric hospital now, and the suicide rate is so high, along with the homicide rate is so high, psychosis is so high. And a lot of the psychosis that people experience is from their stressful situations that they experience every day. It can be stress-induced psychosis, and we see that all the time. Teachers, other mental health counselors coming in for that very reason. Students, adolescents coming in for psychosis, and they're 11, 12, 13 years old. It's just incredible. So the mind is so powerful. How do we steer it? How do we guide it into more positive, empowering self-talk, self-love? So I'm going to go into a little bit 3 things that I noticed as an adult of where I have where I think that the roots of low self-esteem come from, or just not feeling empowered on a day-to-day basis. Number 1, I would say, it's in the social media. It's everywhere, on the billboards and magazines, movies, TV shows, trying to be something that we're not, looking to somebody else and comparing ourselves. A lot of times teenagers come into the hospital and they are comparing themselves to someone else, and they feel not as good as. So there's the lack story that's happening, and myself included. I have done that. So yeah, how many likes am I getting on posts? What are the comments I'm getting? What are other people, other people are appearing a certain way, and oh, maybe I'm not as happy as them right now. It's an illusion that it's like we want to live in this an illusion type of world, instead of reality. So that's number 1. Number 2, looking for my self-worth in as a clinician in clients to tell me I'm a good therapists. If they say I'm a good therapist, then I'm doing great. If they say I'm not so great, then I'm not so great. You know, it's a conditioned thought. Where are we getting our worth, our self-esteem? And I remember one time a couple years ago in a family session, a 17-year-old boy, I set a boundary with him, a healthy boundary, and he started screaming right in front of the family, and he said, "You're a effing horrible therapist. I hate you. I never want to talk to you anymore. I want another therapist." And that was a wake-up call to me. It was like I caught my breath in that moment, almost started crying, almost started walking out, and but realized that if I'm expecting the validation to come from with externally, away from myself, external validation, then who am I at the end of the day? So it's like, how can we start to internally validate myself or yourself? And that's where healthy self-esteem comes from. Second thing, how are we looking for self-esteem outside of ourselves, maybe in our job, at home? And then third, looking for worth in another man. So, or another person, another woman, if you're a guy, or vice versa, whatever, or you're another partner, right? And that can be a dangerous thing, is looking for, the last 2 or 3 guys that I felt ghosted by. Is it really about me? I'm internalizing these things, and so how do I start to converse with myself and tell myself a more empowering story? And it's interesting where this comes from. I was just watching another live Facebook video, and they were talking about the same exact thing that I'm now putting out there, and that is, it's very interesting, these sort of sub-personalities that we talk to ourselves, like the internal story. Where is that really coming from? And it's really coming from our childhood, I believe. And you can comment on this. Where do you think these stories are coming from? This conditioned way of thinking that's putting our confidence at lower levels. Where do you guys think this is really coming from for you? For me, I see that it's from my childhood. For instance, they gave this example, and I'll put this one out there, and then I'll kind of relate it to my own life. And maybe you can relate to this too. They said, if I'm a child and I start drawing a house, and then somebody says, "That's not how you draw a house," right? As a child, I'm not conditioned yet. I'm just thinking, "Oh, I'm drawing this house and I'm really creative." And then somebody says, "Well, that's not really how you draw a house or a bird or whatever." And then I'm like, "Oh, it's not." So then I start to think, "Oh, maybe I'm not as creative as I thought." And then down the road, something else happens, like they put the example out there that the teacher might compliment another student's tree that they drew, but they didn't compliment your drawing. And so you start to internalize this, "Oh, maybe I'm not that creative," and so you make choices from that place of, "I'm not creative." That's the core thought. That's the core belief that you hold for yourself. And then so you make choices from that, and it might be, I don't draw anymore. Maybe I go and play with some blocks, or some whatever, go climb on the treehouse or whatever, and I cut off my creativity. And so same thing, like for me, it's been, a core belief has been like, maybe you can relate to this one, I'm not lovable. Again, that's coming from those sub-personalities I created as a child. Like whenever that little boy in gym class this is a true story, tore off my beaded necklace, and all the beads flew everywhere in the whole gym, and all the kids were laughing at me and looking at me, and it was embarrassing, it was humiliating. And the story that I formed from that, or the message I formed from that, was, I'm not lovable. I'm not, the kids don't like me. I'm not as good as them, or I just had this really embarrassing thing happened, I'm rejected, whatever. And another instance, so these are the instances that kind of stack up. And as a kid, we create these sub-personalities, these like this conscious content. And another one was whenever I was in CCD class in 8th grade. I was 13 years old. It was all girls on one side, all boys on the other side. And I went in with this sparkly eyeshadow to impress my crush. I had a crush on this boy. Priest comes over, and there's like probably 15 kids in this room. The priest comes over and he says, Nicole, do you think, he's like, you're wearing that sparkly eyeshadow, I see. Do you think that if I attach 2 metal trash can lids, shiny metal trash can lids, one to each butt cheek, that would attract all the women? And I kid you not, he said that. And I was so appalled that I just like, it like took me back like by surprise. How could a priest say that, number one? But number two, I did start to cry. So and the message that I formed is key right there, because nobody really processed it with me. I didn't know how to process it as a child. And so it was the shame story, right? The shame story. I'm not good enough. I'm lacking something. I'm rejected. That boy's never gonna like me. I'm not lovable. So again, it reiterates that core belief. And so you go through, I went through some other instances like that. And then when I got into relationships, I made choices from that standpoint of I'm not good enough. So it's interesting that whenever we get into these situations as children, those are the building blocks for how we respond even as adults if we don't reintegrate or disidentify from that. So yeah, so if we can learn how to reintegrate that part back into the whole, it's like all these little parts, all these little beliefs, we can make choices from a more conscious space if we learn to disidentify from those parts of the whole, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody has any, I know I'm going kind of fast, but does this make sense? And have you guys heard of this? Or I just think it's really fascinating, the psyche, and how as kids we will form these stories, and then as an adult, if we're not even aware, we're just kind of operating on autopilot from these stories from our traumas in the past. So yeah, so starting to and so how do we overcome this lower self-esteem, these lower vibrations, these lower vibration stories? I would say I want to hear your feedback. One of the most the best ways that I've used to overcome this is definitely, like I was saying in the last video, a lot more positive self-talk, like literally looking in the mirror. And they say that we are hardwired for negative thinking, to always be thinking negative about ourselves, about other people, but you can literally, it takes 21 days to form a new habit. So you look in the mirror every single day, and I kid you not, I've been saying those mantras that I mentioned in the last video, like everything is happening for my highest good. I am a magnetic goddess, attracting all I need in every moment. Like, trusting that process, I think, has come so far just in the last 2 months since the last breakup that I had. Looking in the mirror and literally telling myself that stuff every single day is literally rewiring my brain and telling myself to just go for things. People are going to have their opinions. Step beyond the fear for yourself. Do it for yourself and nobody else. And that has rewired my brain of stepping into a more positive self-talk, and then that consequently increases self-esteem. Other things, meditation. So number 1, I think, is meditation, or number 2. So positive self-talk, affirmations, and then meditation as well, because meditation is exactly that. It's being able to create a space between your sub-personalities, like all those negatives. So I'm lazy, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And the space between that and who you really are, which is I am love, I am divine, I have I have unlimited creativity from source, from universe, from God, whatever you want to call it. I have unlimited love from source, from creativity, from God. and and realizing the space between that, because we are always reacting from our past. We're always reacting from the sub-personalities of I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. We're usually, when we react, we're usually coming from our past. But when we learn to respond, that's where the meditation piece helps us, is to literally see our thoughts from like an outside source and observe it, not react to it, but start to observe the thoughts, that they're just thoughts and they don't have any meaning or power over us. So that's what meditation, so that's why I say meditation is so powerful. And I think there's so much research going on right now. I'm hearing a lot more about meditation and how powerful that is for people that are very stressed. We always recommend that as a tool after the patient is discharged from our hospital, as well as meditation, and literally giving them meditative tools to take with them, because it's literally that. It's separating your all those sub-personalities of, literally you're identifying with those. I am not lovable, I am not creative, I am not worthy or enough. And you're you're creating a distance between that and who you really are with meditation, because you're able to separate yourself from both of those things. So yeah, does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, I'm really glad to have this conversation with you. So again, what is creating this lower vibration self-esteem that we're seeing a lot of, like people wanting to kill themselves and people wanting to harm other people through shootings or whatever? It literally is, I think what's contributing to this epidemic is how we're talking to ourselves. Are we being compassionate with ourselves? If somebody else is angry with us, are we feeling super bad, super low vibrational mode? Are we very hard on ourselves or somebody else? How are we taught? Like, we have millions of thoughts every day, right? How do we start to separate those thoughts and so they're not so automatic? And I really do believe one is definitely meditation, and second, like yoga, meditation, but also how you're talking to yourself every morning, starting a routine of just being kinder to yourself. So I wonder what your view is on this. Let me see if there's any comments up here. Sobi, oh, your smile is the best therapy. Oh yes, thank you so much. What a compliment. Hi Beatrice. Oh yeah. Sammy, Timothy's on here, Amy, David. I can wave to all of you too. I'm just like, I don't know exactly. Amy told me that there's a way to invite other people, but I haven't figured it out yet. If anyone knows, let me know. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, invite friends to watch. Oh my gosh, this is just such a revelation here. Okay, I don't know if I can do that well. Oh, I would have to go through every single one and invite them. I'm not gonna do that. Oh well. Good words. Thanks, Tim. Hey, Marvin. Nice to see you guys on here. Marcos, Madeline, me, Timmy, Amy. Are you guys still on? I can't tell who's on. Joshy. Hey. Karen. Hey. Hey, girls. Kati. Hi. I can't tell who's on. Jonathan. Where are you at now? Oh. Right now? Well, I'm all over the place. But I work in a psychiatric hospital. So I'm working there, and it's been definitely an experience. We get a lot of people that come in for yeah, schizophrenia, psychosis, adolescents and adults, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety disorders and addictions, all kinds of addictions, detox for that. It's a detox as well. Um, yeah, it's mostly crisis stabilization though. Crisis stabilization and getting people to feel more stabilized in their mood through medication. So that's what I was saying in my first video, is that a lot of the people there, it's a very Western philosophical worldview, because it's like you just give them a pill and you send them on their merry way. It's a 2 to 5 day program. It's a very short-term program. So we don't do a lot of counseling with them. It's more like they come in, we do an assessment, they talk to the doctor, and then we talk to the doctor, and then they talk to the doctor, and then we do discharge planning. So very interesting. Think from my personal experience, hard with society pressures for norms and being a minority. Yeah. So Tim, societal pressures for like feeling normal in a society that puts pressure on you, is that what you mean? And then being a minority, yeah. We were just having this talk in a group the other day that despite cultural, like in that one group, there were people who were born in America, there were people that were born in Africa, there were people born in some Latin American country, there were people born in just people of all different races within that one group. It was yesterday, we had a group. And something came up about that, about feeling like, or keeping in mind that we're all equal, no one is better than anyone else, except that society oftentimes does put pressure on us to be a certain way or to succumb to a cultural norm, and that might not be, how you grew up or your conditioning. So it can prove challenging, but also knowing that if we expand our minds, it starts with each individual person expanding their mind and seeing everyone on the same playing field, on the same, like, we're all human. So interesting, I had a patient the other day that was homeless and he came in and all he wanted was medication to stabilize him because he was being urinated on, he was having his stuff stolen, and all he literally wanted was medication to stabilize him and get him back, because he came in for wanting to harm others that were like urinating on him and stealing his stuff. And I did his assessment, and I think after processing it with my supervisor, I actually realized that he probably had more awareness than I did in that moment, because I went in with an agenda with him. I literally was like, okay, we need to get you off the street. Don't you see that the whole cause of you getting angry and being homicidal is because of your homelessness? And this guy's been homeless for 10 plus years. So I went in with an agenda like, oh, this guy's gonna need to get off the street, he needs to get into a shelter. And he's like, I'm not going into a shelter. And he was adamant that he was literally there. I was like, how can we help you then? Why did you even come in? I was actually getting a little triggered, because I was like, why wouldn't you want shelter? Your basic needs aren't even being met. And he was starting to get angry with me too, because I started to have an agenda with him. And the truth is that you can't have an agenda with a man that's been homeless. That's all he knows. That's his norm, is that he was on the street for 10 plus years, and that's all he wanted to get back to was his homeless. That homelessness is his home. And for me, homeless is not a home. That's the opposite of a home. You don't have a roof over your head. I even brought up cause and effect, which probably didn't make sense to him at all, because my view of cause and effect was, you're on the street, you don't have any food or housing, that's the cause of your anger and your mood instability. And for him it was like, that, no, that's my norm. So it was such a wake up call to me afterwards, thinking, wow, Nicole, you really had an agenda with that guy. You really went in there and tried to change him, or his home, what he considers home. You changed it, tried to change him, or what he wants, tried to get him to see it from a different perspective, and he just wasn't having it. So some people, it's like, you cannot force them to change or to want something else, and I think that's a lot of our maybe discouragement with people in general, is that we want them to do something that we can't make them do. We want them to change in some way, and our expectation is up here, and their expectation is, no, I'm comfortable here. This is my comfort. So it's just very interesting, the difference in perspective of that man, and he really woke me up to a new truth. So just an interesting perspective on culture, since I think Tim brought up being a minority, and homelessness, it's an epidemic as well. So just being aware that people are from different cultures, you can't always expect them to be according to your norm or your perspective, because I did have a different perspective or norm for that guy, and it ended up just being like a clash of the titans or whatever you call that. So just being aware, and one more thing I just want to say, he even mentioned, this is why I say this man probably had more insight than I did. He even said, you remind me of a woman that held me at gunpoint, like tried to get me to do something that I didn't want to do. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I was like, nobody's holding you at gunpoint. He's like, I know, but I'm living in my past, and I associate you with somebody that's trying to hold me at gunpoint. And it was like, okay, I didn't expect that, but to that degree. But for him, living on the streets, that's his norm. Like, to him, it's just another day. Another day is just not getting fed, getting his stuff stolen, being held at gunpoint. So very interesting, that kind of, how do you call that, transference that he had toward me, that I reminded him of that woman that was, so I got to put myself in check too. Just an interesting, different perspective that really woke me up. Let's see. Hi, Danae. You're beautiful too. Thank you. Ryan. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Mary. Drea. Hey, Drea. Drea. It's hard, Tim. It's hard because it makes you question yourself, having a racist moment or microaggressions from others. Homelessness can be heaven and hell depending on if you have money. And that's the thing, like that is his version of heaven, like living. He actually found a lot of freedom living on the streets, because he living in our society where you have to pay for everything, you have to have the stress of your job, you have to pay for everything, you have to pay for a roof over your head, you have to pay for your food. That actually was a prison to him. That was his hell. So very interesting that that his heaven is being homeless, because he finds freedom in that. It's God, most opportune time to tune your life. Say that again. It's the most opportune time to tune your life. I'm not sure I understand that. But yeah, it's interesting where people find their freedom, for sure. Any other comments about this? I'm not exactly sure how this whole thing works, like if people are just tuning in to the conversation or if they're watching from the beginning. I don't really know how it works, but I'm learning as I go. The most important thing to me is just that people are on here, and I really appreciate you guys being on here. This is awesome. Okay, Timothy, it's tune your life. Not totally, because God is very huge, but it brings opportunity to have unique moments. Homeless. Oh, you're talking about homelessness does. Yeah, I mean, I've encountered homelessness people. Like, I've fed the homeless. Actually in El Salvador, we went on this big truck and we fed the homelessness, or the homeless, people who don't have homes, and literally gave them stacks of pizza and just threw them off the truck, and drinks and pizza, and that was it, and they just flocked to the trucks. But it's one thing to do that, and then it's another thing to actually know a homeless person, or encounter them, and actually get to know what is their story and what have they been through. Because for this guy, it was like, I don't want you changing anything, lady. Like, you don't know what I've been. He even said that, you don't know what I've been through. Don't try to change me or where I've been, what I've been through. Just respect me for where I'm at, and that's what most people want. Just meet them where they're at. So, all right. So, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope I answered everyone's comments. Please comment more if you would like, and I'll try to. Just let me know. I know one other person commented, and I don't know if I answered his question. David, I don't know if you're on here. You see the most love as a kid on the streets. A working person is drowning for it. Yeah, true. Yeah, very true. All right. Well, thanks for being on here, everybody. And please, yeah, keep commenting. I know, Tim, you're commenting. That's great. Awesome. Love all the feedback. I wish, like I said before, I'm going to be doing a little interview on Zoom with Anastasia. So I'm going to do that tonight, maybe around 6 o'clock. So hopefully you'll be back, and we'll go from there. Thanks, guys. Bye.